Today we're talking about my Leica R vintage lens lineup, but first, if you're new to the channel, my name is Anson, and on this channel we talk about filmmaking, specifically budget gear, tutorials, and a behind the scenes look at the projects that I'm working on. So if that's something you're into, consider subscribing. Now today we are going through which Leica R lenses I have in my lineup, and this is kind of twofold because it's also really talking about the lenses I use for the Pocket 6K Pro, because aside from the 18 to 35 that I use for YouTube, this is my primary set for really all my cameras. Now for anybody that is shopping for Leica R lenses, the lenses that I'm using is the 29 to 31 serial number range. Lenses before this range are a little bit more vintagey. You're gonna get that really vintage look. And then on the flip side, anything that's beyond 32, I believe, in serial number is a little bit more clinical and sharp. Doesn't have the same characteristic as this set. Now I'm not gonna lie, this set is very popular lately with cinematographers because it does offer some character, but is also kind of a good mixture of character, but also providing a clean image. And so that's the range I'm going for. Every one of my lenses is in that range. So with that, let's dive right into my Leica R lens lineup, starting first with, yes, the 24mm Elmerit F 2.8. Now this lens for me is probably my favorite in the set. It's probably the one I gravitate to the most, simply because it provides so much character. It is the one lens that is the outlier, or kind of the wild card, if you will, for this whole set. It's not really color matched with the rest of the set because it does offer a little bit more of a green tint than the rest of the set does. The rest of the set I was actually really happy to see matches really well, but the 24mm is the outlier there. Leica did model this lens after another Minolta lens, so that's one reason why it's the outlier to the whole set and the whole lineup here. But something that the 24mm does that is just magical is how it flares. You almost have to approach it of like, how can I make it not flare if you don't want it to flare? And the flares are gorgeous. I love what this lens does. And so for me, while it's the outlier as far as color matching, I will gravitate to it most of the time. And so that's the first lens in the lineup, is the 24mm Elmerit F 2.8. Now I do want to mention that this is kind of the introduction to the lineup. I will be doing an individual review of each one of these lenses. And so if you do want to see that, comment below what you would want to see first. I have some things in mind, but if you'd rather see one of these before another, let me know. So next up is where we start deviating from the normal plan of the Leica lens lineup, and that is because instead of using the 35mm f2, I'm actually using the 28mm Elmera f 2.8. And the reason I went with that is because, one, the 35mm f2 is exorbitantly expensive. It is very hard to not find it at a decent price, under like $2,000. And at the time, I'm just really not into 35mm that much to pay that much money. And so for me, having the 28mm to kind of suffice for that like mid-wide range as far as focal length, that's why I went with this one. Plus it's around $1,000, maybe like $1,200, depending on where you buy it. And with that lens, if I'm not really sure what I'm shooting that day and I kind of just want something walk around, I'm going to bring this lens. This is probably my go-to like street lens, or just really kind of a walk around lens. Much like you would shoot with like a 35mm, I shoot with the 28mm. Yes, it's a little bit closer to 24 than maybe the 35 would be, and it's almost redundant focal lengths at that point, but the 24 offers something unique enough to where it stands on its own, and then the 28 does offer that more like walk around focal length. With crop sensor cameras like the 6K Pro or even the X-T3, which I recently just picked up, this offers a 45mm equivalent or somewhere around there, and I've actually really gotten to like that focal length rather than 50mm, because it's not super tight like 50mm, but it is around that same range. And so that's another reason why I really like the 28mm. And so the next lens in the lineup is going to be a 50mm, but it's not going to be the Summicron, it's actually the Summilux, which is the f1.4. Now I've been asked a couple times why I didn't get the Summicron, and really it's just preference. I like the fact of having an f1.4 versus an f2 50mm if I want to do some more low light filming, and the Elmerits, the f2.8s, aren't really cutting it. I can take the 50 and get a little bit more low light shots. And so that's why I went with the f1.4. Now I will say that this lens is probably my least used lens because typically I do a lot of handheld filming, and 50 millimeters is starting to get to a point where it's a little bit harder to do handheld shots with the 6K Pro because any type of micro jitters or movement is just way more pronounced. I don't really gravitate to this lens for like a certain character or something like that. It is literally just, I need more reach, let's go with the 50 millimeter. But I will say I used it on the wedding shoot and I've used it on another shoot, and I love how it performs. The last lens in the lineup is the 60 millimeter Elmerit F 2.8 macro lens. This and the 24 millimeter are probably my favorite from the set, simply because I love a good macro, and the colors and overall image quality that comes out of this macro lens is just so good. If there's one thing I can get across with this video, it's the overall richness and image quality of these lenses. And so that's one thing I've loved about shooting with these lenses is, while yes, they may not be perfect, what they offer in the overall rich image quality is just amazing. And then with that, that's my Leica R setup, is the 24 millimeter, the 28 millimeter, the 50 millimeter Summa Lux, and the 60 millimeter macro. And so that's it for me. If you guys do have any questions about any of these lenses, let me know in the comments below. Or if you're getting into shopping for Leica R lenses and you're not sure what you're looking for, or if you have questions, let me know in the comments below as well. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy the video, make sure to give it a like. And if you're digging the overall content from the channel, consider subscribing. As always, thank you for joining. Go and find your journey. Go embrace life. Stay safe. Be happy. Support each other. Peace.